The judge says Maricopa County Sheriff Paul Penzone will face a contempt of court hearing. ABC 15 tracking the case. It stems from a racial profiling lawsuit filed against the agency while former Sheriff Joe Arpaio was still in office. Civil rights lawyers argue MCSO has not met the requirements that stemmed from that ruling.
Investigator Liliana Soto shows us how we got here, diving into the issues that are still impacting our community today.
From 2006 to 2015, Latinos in Maricopa County were targeted during crime sweeps, raids at workplaces, and traffic stops, all under former Sheriff Joe Arpaio's leadership. Records show Latinos were pulled over for minor traffic infractions in neighborhoods like this one in Guadalupe, just to be questioned about their legal status.
That was the norm.
Daniel Magos and his wife say they were racially profiled by one of Arpaio's deputies in 2009.
We were targeted because of the color of the skin.
He was a key witness in the case against Arpaio and now one of the main characters of a book that's making national headlines.
I haven't read it all because opens up all wounds.
Driving While Brown is a brand new book about former Sheriff Joe Arpaio's controversial immigration tactics.
Touches the soul, touches the core, and not in a nice way.
Critics of MCSO say issues linked to Arpaio's era are still relevant today. MCSO still hasn't complied with court orders from 2018 in the Melendres case. The average internal investigations for complaints against deputies is taking 500 days, far from the 60 to 85-day target laid out by the ruling. ACLU says there's currently a backlog of 2,000 investigations that need to be completed. Critics say that's problematic for an agency with a history of MCSO.
I remember a scene where there was a little girl sitting in the back seat of a car, and it was hot that day, and it was sweltering, and she was crying, but she was crying, I think, because she was watching her mother being handcuffed. She reminded me of some of my nieces. This could have been my niece. This could have been me.
Activist Lydia Guzman says she witnessed many unlawful traffic stops under Arpaio. She says it's never too late to remind people what it's like to be driving while brown in Maricopa County and why there's still so much trauma in the community.
What we saw was nothing but carnage of families being torn apart, children crying, women crying. Someone's parent was being taken away, someone's child, father, and that was heartbreaking.
Liliana Soto, ABC 15 Arizona.
We reached out to MCSO for comment, but we have not received a response. Now, we'll keep tracking this case in the coming days. We also sit down with the former Sheriff Joe Arpaio to discuss it in a one-on-one interview with the ABC 15 investigators.
Governor Ducey and DPS both blasting out a message about a single traffic stop.
They claim troopers found 17 alleged undocumented immigrants. This happened on the I-10 near Ray Road back in April. The report troopers made about this stop is now being called problematic by civil rights organizations and some lawyers.
ABC 15 investigator Liliana Soto got a hold of that report and breaks down just what happened.
Not all traffic stops make headlines, and not all traffic stops get tweeted by DPS and the governor. But this one did. A state trooper finding 17 alleged undocumented immigrants during a traffic stop. Sounds simple, but it isn't. And that's because of a law called SB 1070.
Allows police officers, when they have suspicion that somebody may be in the country undocumented, to call in ICE.
Daniel Ortega is a civil rights lawyer who fought SB 1070 in court. He says despite the law enforcement still can't stop someone simply because they believe a person is undocumented. He argues that's what happened along I-10 when the truck was pulled over for doing 60 in a 65.
Impeding traffic, going 60 in a 65 mile per hour, it's an absolute lie. He stopped them because he believed that they were undocumented.
According to the DPS report, after the trooper made the traffic stop, he mentions he noticed the front seat passenger was wearing camel-style clothing, and he, quote, smelled an odor consistent with the smuggling of illegal aliens, unquote.
If this had been white people in camouflage, he never would have stopped them. It never would have been a reason for that.
A spokesperson for DPS responded to the criticism, saying in part, the department doesn't consider the order that's consistent with smuggling of illegal aliens as an acceptable factor to establish reasonable suspicion that a person is a non-citizen and unlawfully present in the U.S. DPS went on to say the report should have been better articulated and that the trooper has 20 years of experience dealing with drug and human smuggling investigations. Lawyers like Ortega say the stop along I-10 is problematic because Maricopa County has a long history of racial profiling by law enforcement. From 2006 to 2015, Latinos in Maricopa County were targeted during traffic stops under former Sheriff Joe Arpaio's leadership. We interviewed Arpaio recently about his book titled Sheriff Joe Arpaio, an American Legend, and about whether or not he regrets any of the immigration tactics he directed as a sheriff.
We didn't go around stopping people skin color. I've always said in my career I'm an equal opportunity incarcerator. I lock everybody up.
In 2017, Arpaio was convicted of criminal contempt for violating a federal judge's order from 2011 to stop racially profiling Latinos. He was then pardoned by Trump in 2017. Still, Arpaio says he committed no wrongdoing and was enforcing criminal law.
Being undocumented is a civil offense.
Coming into our country is also criminal. At least the second time is criminal.
Well, when you pull someone over, you don't know if that person came with a visa and overstayed the visa.
It doesn't matter.
Immigration lawyers say it does matter. Entering the U.S. without documents only violates immigration laws, not criminal law. Ortega says not knowing the law is the problem with SB 1070.
They're the kind of problems that we anticipated from the beginning when they passed SB 1070, and that is that law enforcement was going to use it to profile.
As far as the DPS traffic stop, the U.S. citizen driver allegedly admitted to being a human smuggler. The 17 individuals were released. Border Patrol says they couldn't make it. ICE says when they got to the freeway, they were gone. DPS says federal law enforcement refused to show up. Liliana Soto, ABC 15, Arizona.
DPS says they have no comment on the criticism they have received. You can read the full report and the list of reasons DPS gave for this traffic stop. We have that in this story on abc15.com. Two organizations filing a public records request with the Phoenix Police Department. Puente Human Rights Movement and the ACLU of Arizona say the department is not providing crucial data about its immigration enforcement procedures.
ABC 15 investigator Liliana Soto spoke to both organizations and the community who claim Phoenix PD are overstepping their boundaries.
Operations Order 4.48, the immigration-related policies that Phoenix Police Department must follow when enforcing criminal and civil immigration violations. Phoenix Police created it in 2010 after the passing of SB 1070 into law, which allows a police officer to question someone's immigration status only if there's a reasonable suspicion that this person is undocumented. According to ACLU website, SB 1070 requires Arizona law enforcement officers to determine or attempt to determine a person's immigration status only in two limited circumstances: a DUI, or when the officer detains a person on suspicion of a state law crime and the officer, during the course of the stop, develops reasonable suspicion that the person is an alien unlawfully present in the U.S. Every city has its own policies. Here in Phoenix, the operations order is Phoenix Police's own guidance, which includes that officers are prohibited from asking victims or witnesses of a crime about their immigration status, holding a person longer than it takes to address the purpose of a traffic stop. The courts have ruled that officers cannot prolong a stop to conduct an immigration check. For example, if an officer took 20 minutes to issue a traffic citation, they cannot wait more than that for an ICE officer to show up. Also, under this policy, officers must have supervisor approval before contacting ICE. After all that, officers must fill out a form with basic information such as the reason for an immigration check, the purpose of initial contact, the race and ethnicity of the person they stopped, and the outcome of the traffic stop. But in 2017, another requirement was added.
That the department has to track and collect data of immigration-related activities by its rank-and-file patrol officers within the city of Phoenix. To date, we have not received any of this information.
Christine Wee is an attorney with the ACLU of Arizona. She says even though the Phoenix Police Department is required to collect the data, they have never made it available to the public, at least not voluntarily. If the public wants to have access, they must file a public record request, which can usually take months.
The public is entitled to know what is going on, and these are just facts. This is objective data that we need to know to make sure that they are doing what they can to show us commitment that they are serious about ending racial profiling and racial injustice in the city.
Puente was able to get a hold of some of the data in 2020 through council member Carlos Garcia. Their findings
is showing that 95% of the people that they're contacting ICE for are U.S. citizens or lawful residents, and less than 3% are folks who are undocumented.
ACLU and Puente say there's an increasing number of complaints from the community against Phoenix police, claiming the officers are calling ICE during regular traffic stops.
My brother called me and I'm so sorry, sister, what I have to tell you. And I said, what happened? What happened? I thought they had gotten in a car accident or something like that. But he told me, I just took your husband. And I said, no, please don't tell me that. Please don't tell me that. I was taking my girls to school. I remember I had to pull over because I couldn't contain myself. It was really hard.
Yvonne is a U.S. citizen. Her husband is not. He was sent to an immigration detention center after a traffic stop in Phoenix. His story and why having access to this data is important for Phoenix police transparency in the coming days. Liliana Soto, ABC 15, Arizona.
ABC 15 reached out to the Phoenix Police Department about why this data is not publicly accessible. They tell us the Phoenix Police Department does collect the information referenced, and it will make it available through a public records request.
ABC 15 News at 6:30. I'm Katie Rammel.
And I'm Steve Irvin. How often do Phoenix police officers call ICE during a traffic stop, and why do they do it?
Last week, we told you about the brewing legal fight. Puente Human Rights and the ACLU filing a public records request to get the data Phoenix PD is supposed to be keeping on these cases.
Some immigration lawyers say they're violating civil rights against unlawful searches and seizures. Tonight, ABC 15 investigator Liliana Soto speaks to a Phoenix family now fighting deportation after one of these stops.
No va a pasar nada, y a los 45 minutos llegó el oficial del ICE.
Carlos Núñez was on his way to work when he was pulled over last year. He was driving without an Arizona driver's license.
Y sí hubo un quebrantamiento, sí lloré, me acordaba mucho de mis hijos, mi esposa.
His wife, a U.S. citizen, still remembers the moment when she got the call.
I just took your husband. And I said, no, please don't tell me that. Please don't tell me that.
So what can an officer do and not do? If someone doesn't have a driver's license, would that be a reasonable suspicion to call ICE?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Christine Wee is an attorney with the ACLU of Arizona. She says not having a state ID or just a foreign passport on their own is not enough to support a reasonable suspicion to inquire about one's immigration status. ACLU highlights an authorized presence in the U.S. is not a crime and doesn't by itself mean that someone has committed or will commit a crime. Still, Cherie Wright, an immigration lawyer in Phoenix, says 70% of her clients come in because of traffic stop violations.
And it happens every single day. Like a new client comes in with the same traffic violation issues every day.
For Carlos, his traffic stop caused him to end up at an immigration detention center for 2 months.
I remember my little girl crying. She couldn't sleep that night. She kept crying and just asking me, is Daddy gonna be okay? What do you say to that?
And now you got that letter. What is the letter saying?
It's asking me to turn my husband in. And they call him an alien. and the date is for July 8th. I have to be there with him at 9. And it says there, if I do not do this, they will put a warrant for his arrest. And then it says reason, removal.
Which is deportation.
Yes.
Yvonne says she's afraid of losing her husband. He's the only provider in the family.
My niece also lives with us, and her son, he has autism. You know, my brother that has Down syndrome, my mom that has her heart condition, she has diabetes, she also has nephrostomy tubes, and, you know, I had to stop work because I have to take care of my mom. So if he was in here, how are we going to be able to be okay?
They're not alone. In fact, Wright says most of her clients have been turned to ICE after minor traffic violations.
Maybe a taillight that's broken, or maybe not fully stopping at a stop sign.
As far as Yvonne, her last message is to the Phoenix police officer who reported her husband.
If he didn't have to, why did he do it?
For now, the family will continue enjoying little moments like this one. Moments that they say no immigration law can take away. Liliana Soto, ABC 15, Arizona.
We have more information about your rights when law enforcement asks for your immigration status during a traffic stop. It's available on this story on abc15.com.